This is The Mud Peddlers, a podcast where two nerdy ceramic artists share the behind the scenes of their worlds of clay. We are your hosts, Lindsey M Dillon.
And I am Donte of Earth Nation.
This week on The Mud Peddlers, we are doing a little bit of a thing called Meet the Ingredients.
Yeah, we want to talk about glazes on a very base level, and it's occurred to me that people who don't put glazes together would still benefit from knowing what a glaze is at its base and knowing what, like, some of the minerals that make up a glaze are.
Yeah, and we've talked about some of the basics of glaze making in previous episodes, but what I liked about doing an episode about glazing that both kind of covered what glazes are, again, because Lord knows repetition is helpful for remembering information.
Glazes, yeah.
But also, like, I remember when I first started making glazes, and it kind of felt like learning another language in terms of, like,
100%.
I see this word and I go, what the hell is Rio?
Dude,
you know?
I went to the store. I went to Alpha one time and I was like, I need Rio. And they were like, what? And I was like, Rio? And I didn't know it was an abbreviation for red iron oxide.
Right.
And then I didn't know that there was different types of iron oxide. I didn't know black and yellow existed until like 4 years ago. You know, and like, yeah, no, absolutely. But discovering these things is a whole...
It's a whole thing.
It's a whole thing.
Yeah.
And you don't really know the language until... Because you look... Yeah, you're right. It is a secondary language.
Yeah.
And you look at these things. Being a glaze chemist is kind of like being like a really, really amateur chemist.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. No, I agree. And it's nice to have a little bit of context for what these words are. It's kind of like if you've never seen a cat before and then you're reading a book about cats.
Yes.
It's just like... It's very hard to imagine what's going on.
Yes.
And I kind of feel that same way about glazes. You know, you're looking at things, you go, what is Rio? What is Lithium? You know, it's like you may have heard, you know, the Evanescence song Lithium, and you're going, why is there mental health care medication in my, you know, there's all kinds of associations.
It is the same lithium, though. Like,
is it really?
Yeah. It's not,
I'm sure there's some other stuff going on
I mean,
in there,
there's like, usually we get powdered substances, right?
Right.
But like most... And this is a very broad statement, very broad. But most medications are essentially things we've taken from nature and purified into either a compound or whittled down into pill form. That's what it is. Like, my mom is very, like, natural, herbal, you know, don't take medications, and they put stuff in everything. But, like, if you ever discover, like, how a lot of common medications are made, somebody did take a plant, did what my mom and her witchy friends do, where they, like, distill them down to tinctures and drink them and whatnot.
Yeah.
They just put it into, like, a dry pill form. Like, it's almost the same medication. Almost.
Yeah. And of course, for other things, it gets a lot more complicated, but yeah, there's a lot of things. Like, I remember finding that out. Well, okay, never mind. This is a whole ass other conversation.
It's like penicillin is like mold or something like that.
Yeah,
They just purified it to a certain degree, and but like, it came from mold.
It comes from the natural world.
Yeah.
Anyway, medication, especially as regards mental health care, is a whole ass other conversation. But
yeah, I'm a potter, not a doctor.
we are gonna But we're gonna be talking about some things. And so Donte.
Yeah.
Wait, hold on. Let me do NPR voice.
Oh, god damn.
So welcome to the Mud Peddlers. Today we have Donte of Earth Nation Ceramics talking to us about glazes.
And I look at the camera and I throw it up. Gang.
All right, so
he's throwing up gang signs, but it's just a backwards peace sign. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because they don't know what they look like.
Yeah. Anyway, all right, so tell us, give us kind of a baseline, and again, you know, for our listeners who have listened to our previous episodes on glaze chemistry, some of this I'm sure will feel familiar, but again, we're doing the repetition because it's helpful for remembering things, and it's also giving a baseline for folks who haven't heard us talk about glazes before as we get into talking about the four kind of main ingredients that we're going to be covering today.
Yeah, I'm starting to teach my students how to glaze properly and be safe with glazes and what to do and what not to do with glazes and how many layers and different clay bodies. Because when I got into my classroom, they didn't even know that different clay bodies react differently with different glazes, right? If you put like floating blue on a porcelain clay body, it's going to look a lot different from what it would look like on a red stone clay body or something with iron in it, right? I start off most of my classes and explaining to them what glaze is.
Yeah.
Right? And glaze is essentially a suspension. It's not a solution. A solution is where you have things that are soluble with the water, and so they mix into the water, right? We have glazes. We have suspensions. So we basically have rocks suspended in water.
Yeah.
That's what a glaze is.
And I feel like that is easy to understand if you've ever had a glaze hard pan before.
Absolutely.
Because it's basically like, it's...
Damn sodium.
Yeah. Because if a glaze is hard panning, like, you can pretty clearly see that there is a distinction between the things that are in the water and the things that are not in the water. And the things that are not in the water settle to the bottom because they're denser. And anyway.
And overall, you don't really want minerals to be water soluble for your glazes because they mix in with the water on some level. And when you put them on a bisque pot, some of those minerals go into the pores of the pot, and you don't want that. Mm-hmm. You want the glazed minerals to sit nicely on the outside of the pot as it was to be like a layer of minerals, right? So like a good example of this is, remember I went through like a lithium phase where I was like,
yes,
damn lithium! Like lithium is water soluble, especially lithium carbonate.
And we're going to be talking about lithium in more detail a little bit later, but yeah.
And because of that, I try and stay away from it in my glazes. But now, whenever I use lithium in my glazes, especially like over 3%, I have to double dip all my glazes because half of the lithium isn't doing its job because it's going into the pores of my damn pottery instead of on the top layer like it should.
Right.
So I just double layer it. I just double layer helping the secondary layer.
It's more work. It's too much work. I want to be able to single dip my pots and call it good.
I want to single dip that thing and be fine. But glazes in and of themselves, that's what they are. They're just minerals floating and suspended in water. Mm-hmm. Of that, these minerals are usually a ratio or a combination of 3, technically 4 different ingredients. Mm-hmm. Those are your glass formers, like silica, your stabilizers, mostly like alumina, right? And then you have your alkali earths and your alkali metals, right? And that's pretty much it. And those are your glass formers, your aluminas or your stabilizers, and your fluxes. Mm-hmm. And that's essentially it. And
so fluxes, the alkali earth and alkali metal are basically under the umbrella of a flux.
Yes, but you need a ratio of both to make a good strong glaze, but that's a whole
other
that's a whole nother thing. You kind of need both. One of them like really gets the party started as far as melting, and the other one is like a secondary melter.
Okay. Right? And what exactly do you mean by a stabilizer?
A stabilizer is made of usually alumina, and alumina melts at a super high temperature. Temperatures that our kilns don't really work at. So I think, I'm pretty sure silica melts or starts melting around 3100 or 3110 degrees. I'm using Fahrenheit. No, I'm not changing to Celsius. Deal with it. And then alumina is like 5,200 something degrees last time I checked.
Okay.
Right. I could be off, but it is well over the amount that our kilns work at. And because of that, we need another mineral or another ingredient to lower the melting temperature of those two things.
And that's what a flux is.
That's what a flux is.
Okay.
That's what a glaze is made out of chemically, usually.
Okay, so essentially the thing that stabilizers are stabilizing, like, or I guess, okay, so if, and again, I'm kind of trying to like reframe this in as like basic way as I can because there's a lot of stuff that I also don't understand, and there's some terminology that I've just like accepted over the years, like, oh yeah, stabilizers.
I struggle to call them stabilizers, honestly.
What are they stabilizing though? So
some people call them refractories, some people call them stabilizers, some people call them aluminas, but like they all do the same thing. I don't like calling them stabilizers because like realistically, like they don't stabilize a glaze as much as you would think in a practical sense.
Okay.
They're really just one ingredient.
Okay.
There's usually way more silica than there is alumina because alumina is so hard to melt that like even when you go into glazing, you put stuff in, it'll tell you the silica to alumina ratio. Mm-hmm. And that's like how much silica moles or how much silica is in something in comparison to the alumina. And usually there's way less alumina because it's really strong and it's really difficult to melt it.
Okay, so hypothetically, if you had a glaze that had like a bunch of like a really high percentage of like stabilizers, but you wanted it to melt at like cone 6,
right?
You would need to add like a bunch of fluxes to lower that melting point.
Yeah, if generally speaking, if you have more alumina in a glaze or stabilizers as we call them, than you do silica, you're gonna get a glaze that's more matte because that's really what a matte glaze is. It's a glaze that has a higher ratio, or not even higher than silica, but more alumina than it does silica. Like if you have like 9 silica to every 1 alumina, you have a
Uh-huh.
pretty glossy glaze there.
Okay.
But like it starts to get matte somewhere around like the 4-to-1 semi-matte, around the 4-to-1 ratio, where it's like 4 silicas to every 1 alumina.
Right.
And if you look on a stole chart, which is kind of like a mapping of all the glazes and where they go based on the ingredients you put in, and the alumina and silica and XYZ and XYZ, then you can kind of see where it falls on that map. It's a really powerful tool, actually. But alumina is like you can't melt pure alumina. I mean, you can, but like not what we have.
Not with our kilns.
But yeah.
No, even going up to like cone 10 wouldn't be enough.
It's really hard.
Yeah.
Pure alumina is like really hard to melt.
That's cool. Okay. So this is actually super helpful because there's a lot of like, again, like there's a lot of stuff.
Most people call it 3 ingredients.
Yeah.
I say 4. If I'm in an argument, I say 5.
Okay. But let me go over the base 3. Okay, so we've got the glass formers, stabilizers, and fluxes.
That's it.
And fluxes are made up of alkali earth and alkali metal.
That's the general. That's for most cone 10 glazes.
Okay. Cone 10 or cone 6?
Cone 10. Because cone 6, we do a little chemistry trick to make them. Yeah, so most.
Right.
Most glaze chemistry is based in cone 10.
Okay.
And most cone 5, 6s glazes, or lower, we pretty much just add boron. We dump boron in it.
Okay, so...
And that's pretty much what that is. Like, the cone 6 glazes are just cone 10 with boron in them. Like, that's what they are.
Okay.
From the classes that I've taken, that seems to be the general consensus.
Okay, that makes sense.
A certain amount of boron you need to melt, or start melting, rather, at a certain temperature. But, like, yeah. Okay,
so why is it that you would, instead of increasing the flux, you would add boron?
Boron counts as kind of both, and this is an arguable thing.
Okay.
Boron counts as both a glass former and a flux, technically speaking, because it does lower the melting temperature of a glaze if you put boron inside something.
Okay.
But also, it works as a pretty crappy glass former. You still need silica. And this is something that I've been testing over the past couple weeks, and I've been asking, like, Tony Hansen and all them, and John Britt, is... do I have to put silica in a glaze in order for it to be glassy? Can I just replace it with boron? Because boron's technically a glass former. And they're like, yeah, but then like you would have just a really glaze.
Okay,
like, boron is a really bad glass former.
Okay, because boron has like other things that are in it?
No, it's just boron itself is a bad glass former.
Okay.
In comparison to silica. Silica seems to be, and this is kind of where my knowledge drops off, silica seems to be more stable, so you kind of need both. Boron is just the mineral, or at least the element that we use to lower the melting temperature down to cone 6.
Okay.
Lead used to do it, but we ain't using lead.
We ain't using lead anymore. Right. That's no good.
Lead used to be awesome.
Yeah. So if you have a glaze that you have the ratio of silica to alumina that you want, like, you know, or an alumina being a stabilizer. So if you have the glass former and the stabilizer ratio worked out, if you changed the amount of stabilizers to try and get the glaze to melt at a lower point, you could potentially mess up other areas of the glaze.
Let's go back a little bit.
Okay,
so we have the glass former, and we have what we're calling the alumina, what we're calling the stabilizer.
Stabilizers, right? Okay.
If we only have those two, those two by themselves don't really melt.
Okay.
Like, period. Our kilns don't really work at the temperature that those melt.
Right.
So we need fluxes, and that usually is the thing that decides partially how it melts or the temperature it melts at. Usually.
Okay. So if you got all of those 3 things working together,
right, and
you have the glass former to stabilizer ratio the way that you want it, and then you have the flux to get it to melt.
Okay.
If that, so I guess what I'm wondering is that's a glaze.
That is a glaze.
So then, if you wanted
it in water,
and then if you wanted to have it melt at a lower point, why would you add like a boron, like, you know, Gersley borate, to the glaze as opposed to increasing the amount of flux, for instance?
So you can technically do that, but it really just helps the glaze melt a little bit more. It's not like it helps the glaze mature at the proper cone. We need that boron to do a little chemistry trick in order for it to really mature at cone 5/6. I say cone 6 because I work at cone 6, but I get better color. But like, yeah, it's increasing the amount of flux in a glaze that only has flux, alumina, and silica to such a high amount that it lowers the temperature all the way down to like 4 negative cones.
Right.
Is a crazy amount of flux.
Okay, and that's something that would be harder to do if you were just doing it with flux.
Way harder to do.
I'm trying to find like a metaphor here that can work. So it's kind of like boron is like the special secret sauce that
kinda.
makes your barbecue sauce like out of this world, like
Listen,
so good. We don't know what's in
sriracha.
it, but
It's sriracha.
okay.
But I can make a pretty good sauce with ketchup and mayo and some relish, and that's a good sauce by itself.
Yeah.
You know, we can call silica the pickles.
Okay.
Or the relish, I guess.
Okay.
And we can call mayo the stabilizer.
Okay.
It's thick, it's creamy, it has body to it.
Okay.
Helps stick to the stuff, right? And we can call ketchup the fluxes, because that gives it the real not hot, but it gives it the good flavor, right?
Okay.
But I'll tell you what.
Yeah.
If you mix mayo, a little bit of relish, and some sriracha together, Cone 6. Tastes great. Shut up. No, shut up. You think I'm crazy. You're yelling at me right now through your... No, they're in the car and they're like, ew, shut up. It's great. Don't knock it till you try it.
No, I believe it. I believe it.
It's amazing.
Is the sriracha shortage over, by the way?
It's over. I'm so happy.
Okay.
The sriracha shortage
Yeah.
and the ancient copper shortage is over.
Oh, bless. Oh,
It's a new day.
Oh my God.
It's a new dawn.
And I'm feeling
good.
Wom, 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 wom. Okay, yes, excellent.
By the way, Amico did send me, thank you, Amico, sent me a new version, 2 bottles of their new ancient copper, because they reformulated it.
Oh, yeah,
And it's a completely different color. Not the finished product, just the juice itself.
Yeah, the unfired glaze is, yes.
I call it the juice just because when you say the word glaze, people assume it's like hardened.
Oh, gotcha.
Glaze.
Yeah.
So like the liquid before it's real glaze, I guess.
I
just call it the glaze juice.
The glaze juice. You know, that works.
I tell my students, they're like, can you mix the glaze? And I'm like, if you mean you can mix the juice, no, you cannot mix the juice. But if you mean, can you layer glazes on a pot? Yeah, you can do that. You can technically mix glazes in that way. Yeah. But don't think you can just put yellow and green together and make something else. Like, this doesn't work that way.
Yeah. To kind of summarize here, so glazes, a base glaze, like a base like cone 10 glaze, has glass formers, stabilizers, and fluxes. Yes. And then if you want it to have...
And those are floating in water.
Yes. And then to get that base cone 10 glaze to fully mature at a lower cone, for instance, cone 6, then you add... boron.
Some form of boron. Whether it comes in Frit 3134, 24, or Girthy borate. Which... Then
you add that to that, and then that will lower... or that will make the glaze fully mature at a lower cone.
Depending on how the ratio of what you put in. And I want to make this clear. It's less about the amount you put in, and it's more about the ratio in comparison to the other minerals in the glaze. Okay. Because I think some people think, like, I'll just add more silica to make something more glassy. But the glaze is already at, like, 100%. It's already complete. But realistically, we have ratios, right? So I have a chart somewhere in my studio where it's, like 11 silica... And this is just like an amount. This isn't like 11 grams. This is just a ratio amount. Yeah. To 1 alumina is like a really glossy glaze. It's a lot of glass in comparison to the amount of alumina in there, right? Right. And as you go down, you go to 10 alumina for every 1 silica. And then you keep going. Yeah. Right? Or rather, you go to 10 silica for every 1 alumina, because alumina is usually way less. Once you get to like in between 5 and 3, you start to get to like the semi-matte and matte areas. But there is a point where you can go to like a 1-to-1 ratio where the glaze does not mature or it's under fired.
Interesting.
And those are like places that we don't usually go to.
Right, because then you start worrying about like
glaze defects pretty much.
Yeah.
Just places where glazes don't really work that much. Right?
Okay.
And that's pretty much it. But you can essentially mess up the ratio so bad that the glaze doesn't really do its job. For most people, I think they worry about making like good color glazes. I'm at the point where I'm worried about how strong the glaze is, the flux ratios, and like...
the efficiency of the glazes. I remember you talking a lot about that too.
The efficiency of the glaze is really... And this is maybe the next part. Because once we have the information we've talked about down here, right? Like... glaze is minerals suspended in water in specific ratios, and those ratios are ratios of silica, alumina, alkali earth, and alkali metal, all floating in water. Right? And that's what a glaze really is. Yeah. And then if you want to make it cone 6 usually, because most glazes are based in cone 10 chemistry, then you would add something like boron to them. And you can add other stuff, but I don't really go to the other stuff. I do boron. I do boron, I'm cool with boron. Yeah. Right? After that, you start looking into the minerals themselves. Yes. And that's where things get tricky. Yes. Because like you can have things like a soda feldspar,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because recipes will say like blah 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 soda feldspar,
Right.
and soda feldspar is the cousin to like potash feldspar. Potash feldspar has potassium in it, which is technically a flux,
Mm-hmm.
and so is sodium,
Mm-hmm.
and sodium comes from soda feldspar. Right? And that'll supply you with a little bit of flux, but like mostly alumina. So when you go to digitalfire.com, right, and you look up like a certain feldspar, it'll say the majority of it is like 66.9% alumina.
Right.
And then a certain percentage of it is sodium.
Mm-hmm.
And then it'll have other trace minerals in there. Right? And these minerals fall on the chart of either like glass former or stabilizer or something like that. Right? The troubling part, the annoying part, is that almost all minerals have other crap in them.
Right.
And so this is where we have to kind of do the balance. And that's where you get your knowledge from being like kind of amateur, just knowing what glazes are, to really developing them.
Yes, because if you're developing the glazes, you have to know, like, okay, like something like silica, you know, hypothetically, is kind of like a single ingredient, whereas something like a flux is kind of like a stir fry. Like you've already had like this, it has a bunch of other things in it. So you have to know how the various ingredients in the stir fry are gonna interact with the other single ingredient that is in the recipe. We're gonna see how far we can push this cooking metaphor.
The cooking metaphor is crazy.
Hopefully it is helpful. And also, by the way, like for the most part, like like knowing, you know, what the specific makeup of like a flux is, for instance, that's definitely more like advanced knowledge. Like for instance, if you have a recipe for chocolate chip cookies,
Okay.
you can make chocolate chip cookies without knowing what baking soda is, right? It's just a white powder that you put in your cookies and it does something.
Yes, but it is chemistry,
you know?
though.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's
Yeah.
chemistry. But my point is, for like glaze recipes, you don't have to, like, unless you are developing your own glazes, as in like you are creating your own chocolate chip cookie recipe.
Yeah.
Like, you should probably know the difference between baking soda and baking powder. If you're trying to decide, oh, I'm making chocolate chip cookies, should I use baking soda or baking powder? Like, what are the properties of each thing? How does it affect the recipe? You know, like, that is for if you are developing your own recipe, like, from scratch.
Yes, but although, to play devil's advocate,
Yes.
I will say I know plenty of people, and I was once in a space where I was just kind of like throwing random stuff in glazes to see what they do without understanding anything. And I made a couple bangers that way.
Okay, yeah, that's
Right?
that's true.
And
that's true.
John Britt kind of echoes this in a lot of his videos, where he's like, I know plenty of people who just throw stuff together, and as long as they kind of know what every chemical does, you're okay. But there's also people who are more like science-minded,
Yeah.
who really concentrate on only the chemistry, and they develop glazes like that. I'm somewhere in the middle where I know what most of the minerals do, and like some minerals are really special to me, but I know that at a base level, the minerals are only special because they have a chemistry to them, and I'm really attached to the Stoll chart and the chemistry and knowing what they do.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So hopefully that is a solid foundation for our listeners to understand what makes up a glaze recipe.
We can go to the unsolid stuff real quick.
Unsolid.
Unsolid.
Okay.
Like when you had Taco Bell right after Jamba Juice.
Oh no, that's a bad.
Directly after.
That's
You didn't wait.
That's the Amazon River of liquid.
Because it's brown.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. Oh my god.
Because they're both brown.
They're both brown. Oh, good lord.
Well, it ain't clear no more.
No, it's
I mean,
not.
it was never really clear if you think about it. Yeah,
but it's
but like, it's not like human intervention has made it cleaner.
Yeah, no, it's true. Oh, one thing I did forget to add, which you have mentioned as well, is that like when we talked about what are the base ingredients, and you say like it's 4, and if I'm getting into an argument, it's 5.
It's 5.
I feel like those other things are like the colorants, like the red iron oxide, the rutile oxide, the manganese dioxide. Those are the things that then
it. Yes and no at the same time. Like when I took my chemistry classes, my glaze chemistry classes, right? They were like, hey, some of the things that make color, like copper and to some extent zinc and iron, technically also count as fluxes.
Oh, okay.
But like many people don't count those in. Like if I want to make the color green, I make a glaze, and then I add the amount of essentially heavy metal, which is copper, let's say copper, in there to make a certain amount or depth of green.
Yeah.
Right? But like I almost never go over the limit to where it leaches. I mean, almost never, as in like 99% of the time. To make them food safe.
Right.
So they don't leach. But like a really good glaze chemist would be like, well, remember, you just added a little bit more of this in there as well, technically, along with the color. It almost never matters to me.
Okay, because it's such a low, like, the other things that are kind of in with the copper it's not a large enough percentage that it's affecting the other things.
Like iron is, and this is, you have to double check me on this, but iron is technically a flux, red iron oxide. I never counted in what the flux is.
Okay.
Almost ever. I always look at the extended UMF, which is like the calculator that would count it in, I suppose. I don't look at it most of the time because it's so close that if I'm developing a glaze, and this is just the way I usually develop a glaze. I develop a glaze and then I usually hone it down by making it what I call more efficient, right? And the reason that I do that is because a lot of these minerals come with a lot of extra stuff that I don't need in the glaze.
Right.
Like, I already know I need, like, 10% silica in my glaze to make a good amount of silica, right? To make it at least glassy enough to work with. But so many of the other minerals have, like, silica free-floating in them already.
Yeah.
So, half the time I end up taking silica out and adding flux. So it gets a little bit more of a melt.
Okay.
And then I go through this process with all the minerals. And it's not like some minerals are dirtier or more clean. But the more pure or the more straight to the point that I can get my chemistry for my minerals, the better it is. Like, if I had a source of lithium that was not water soluble, that was just like 99% lithium, and I get a chemical called lithium, and I dump lithium in the glaze, I'd be very happy, because I've just added a very powerful flux in the form of lithium that stays suspended in the water and doesn't go in with the water. Like, I'd be super happy if I could. But for now, I usually have to deal with the chemistry of, you know, putting like G200 feldspar. G200 feldspar is a really good source of silica and alumina. It's a potassium feldspar, so it has potassium in it.
Okay.
Right? But,
is that should we do our formal introduction of the various ingredients since we're talking about G200, because that's one of the ones that's on our list?
Yes.
Okay.
I suppose this is the formal introduction.
Yes.
Right? But this is where the chemistry gets messy.
Wait, hold on.
Oh yeah.
We would like to introduce
Jesus.
G200. Yay! G200, welcome to the floor.
Thank you. He's an old mineral. Aww. And he's had kids, and his kids are like G200 EU, and he has his grandson is like G200 AU.
Alternate universe.
Yeah, and then his cousin is like cousin's like a Minspar 200.
Oh, okay.
It's a family.
All right,
it's a family for sure.
Okay, well let's learn about G200.
Right, so like G200 feldspar, if you look at it on Digital Fire, has calcium at 0.8%.
Okay.
Right? Has magnesium.
Wait, actually, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but what exactly is G200?
It's a feldspar.
It's a feldspar.
And feldspars usually supply a good amount of alumina, which is your stabilizer, as well as a bit of flux.
Okay.
Usually.
Okay, so within the kind of three main ingredients of glass former, stabilizer, or a flux.
Yes.
It's more of a flux.
No.
Okay, so
it's
it doesn't...
EPK, like, EPK is technically in that category, but EPK has like a lot of alumina in it.
Okay.
But then G200 feldspar is also technically kind of in that category, but G200 feldspar is like 66% silica.
Okay.
It just brings a bunch of other crap with it.
So sometimes essentially ingredients don't cleanly fall into
100%
one of these main categories.
Yeah, just because I use the feldspar, and a feldspar is usually a good source of like silica or alumina, doesn't mean that feldspars are always like a fantastic source of alumina. G200 is a good example. If you go to Digital Fire and you look at G200 feldspar, it's going to be like 65, in between 65 and 67% of, I think it's 66 point something, of silica.
Okay.
But like...
So it kind of performs the role of both glass former and stabilizer.
To a degree, yes.
Okay. Sorry. I didn't want to interrupt, but feel free to read the other things that are in
the awful
G200.
part about this is that a feldspar is a feldspar, right? But there's two different types of feldspar, usually. There's soda feldspars, and those are usually sodium-based.
Okay.
And there's potash feldspars, or potassium feldspars, which is potassium-based. Potassium and sodium are both fluxes, right? Here's the crazy thing. A soda feldspar probably has some amount of potassium in it.
Okay.
And a potassium feldspar probably has some amount
of sodium in it. Okay.
It's just usually when you categorize them, they have more of one than the other.
Gotcha. Okay.
And that's the irritating part for me.
Oh my god, yeah.
Personally, is because, and let's look up G200 feldspar here.
Yeah. So what exactly is in, like, knowing that G200 doesn't cleanly fit into one of the main categories of glass former, stabilizer, or flux.
Right. And when I say cleanly, I mean like directly. It's not like this is a thing, it does this, and you don't have to count in any other elements in the periodic table. It always comes with some other junk.
Okay. So knowing that, what is in G200?
Okay, so G200 feldspar, at least the one I'm talking about, because there's different variations, is a potassium-based feldspar. It has 10%. Actually, I'm looking at it now. It has 10.8% potassium, and its sodium amount is at 3.1. Right, so it has both sodium and potassium in it, right? It also has alumina in it, which is 18.5%. And here's the awful part. It has 66.3 amount of silica.
Interesting.
So it has more silica, technically, in it than any of the other stuff. But it still qualifies as a potassium feldspar.
AKA like a potash.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Absolutely. Okay. The crazy part is that technically has like a little bit of iron in it, and I hate that so much. I have a weird disdain for EPK, even though I think we're almost not out of it, but the source is getting kind of scarce.
And EPK stands for Edwin?
Edgar Plastic Kaolin.
I always think Edwin from the original Baldur's Gate.
From Full Metal. Oh, never mind.
Yeah.
Edwin,
yeah.
I only played Baldur's Gate 3.
Baldur's Gate 1 has an evil mage called Edwin in it. Anyway, point being.
Here, let's look up EPK real quick.
Okay.
EPK is insane. EPK.
I guess we're also introducing EPK. EPK, welcome to the floor! Woo!
There's one guy in the background. Boo! You have too much iron in you! Shut up, nerd! Shut up!
By the way, the source that we are looking at for like all the percentages is Digital Fire, which again, if you like this kind of content, well, first of all, like and subscribe.
Honestly, just rate the podcast and I'll be pretty happy.
Yeah, we'll be happy.
Throw money at us.
Yeah, no, of course.
But
anyway, if you don't want to wait for us to create more episodes like this and you want to really do like a chemical deep dive, Digital Fire is an amazing resource. And highly recommend that you go have a look at them if you're interested in the chemistry side of ceramics in general.
Yeah, and here's the thing. Like, we just talked about G200 feldspar having majoritively like 66% of silica in it. It really depends on the ratio. Because the ratio that is needed in a glaze, that still might be considered a high amount of potassium versus the silica. Because silica has such a less effect than the fluxes do in the glaze. So it really depends on the ratio of what's in your stuff rather than it does just the ingredients.
Right.
So it's really difficult to just be like, just put some G200 in there. That'll take care of it. Well, you're probably dumping a lot of silica in there, which is fine. But that now means I get to take out silica from the portion of my recipe that says silica.
Right. If you are wanting to make your glaze more efficient and still kind of do what you want it to do.
For that's at least my thing. I have like 5 or 6 tricks I use to make my glazes, and one of them is like always that's too much damn silica. I can just take that silica out and add some anything but. I always go anywhere but lithium carbonate first.
Okay.
I'll go to zinc. I don't care. I'll go to zinc instead of lithium. Like I just need some kind of flux.
Okay.
You know what I mean? That gives it like good. Sometimes zinc gives it the color I don't want it to, but stuff like that. Or let's take a look at EPK, right?
Yeah.
EPK supplies a pretty good amount of both alumina and silica, but I mainly use it for stabilizers, alumina, right? So it's like 37. I'm looking at it here. It's 37.36% of the entirety of the mineral is alumina, right? Which is super cool, right? It even has some lithium in it. It's 13.2%. And I actually do not know what it's categorized as. I want to say just a source of alumina, but I wouldn't be like that.
Making it kind of a little bit more like a flux. Or like a stabilizer.
Like a stabilizer,
of?
yeah.
Okay.
It's actually a very good stabilizer. If I go to the stole chart on Glazy and I put in all my calculations and all that junk, and I put EPK, it goes up. Like it messes up the ratio of alumina to silica because it has a good amount of alumina in it.
Okay.
And as you remember, we're talking about the ratios. So like putting a little bit of alumina in a recipe or an ingredient that has more alumina than, not even more, just like even 20% alumina versus the other things is still more powerful than all those other damn chemicals. Because it's so difficult to melt it. So EPK is actually a really good source of alumina, even though it only has 37.36% of its entire makeup being alumina.
That's amazing.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's really about the ratio. And, like, it has silica in it as well. It's 45.73%. I'm just reading directly off of Digital Fire here. But it does have, like, trace amounts of manganese, of sodium, of potassium. But I want to make this clear. It does not categorize it as, like, a potassium or a sodium. You know what I mean?
Yes.
We usually go off of what it's majoritively giving us.
Yes. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So you wouldn't consider EPK potash or soda ash, meaning sodium or potassium, like...
It's more about the source than it is the label, if that makes sense. When I look at EPK, I don't go like, that's a potassium or a sodium feldspar. I look at it and I go, that's a good source of alumina.
Okay. So, all right, so we've talked a little bit about G200. We've talked a little bit about EPK.
I love you, G200.
Yeah.
I hate you, EPK, I hate you.
Let's talk about silica.
Silica is just a glass former, and I'm pretty lucky that silica is such a relatively clean mineral, because silica is like, at least good silica is like at least 99% silica or silicone, I guess.
Does it have a? Can we see like the chemical breakdown on?
Yeah, on Digital Fire, it's quartz / flint silica dioxide, I think it is.
SiO2.
SiO2, yes, but it says and I'm not good with the chemical names. I'm so sorry. Someone's probably like, this nerd thinks he knows what he's talking about. But like realistically, I don't care what the name is because I know it's a glass former. It says 100% of it is silica dioxide.
Oh wow!
But I don't agree with that.
What do you mean you don't agree?
I think it's like 90-something%. I'm so if we really tested it, if we had like the equipment.
Yeah, I mean, I think for this, I mean, again, that's like part of the reason we're like going to Digital Fire for this information. Because like when you were reading the information about what all is in EPK and what all is in G200.
I think it's approximate though, if I'm being honest.
Okay.
I think it's like, these numbers are probably really, really close. Mm-hmm. But if I was like a real chemist, I'd probably be like, well, 99.99.
No. Okay, I got you.
I'm just trying to be more accurate than not, because I don't want someone to, actually. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm just trying to be accurate.
Okay, so generally speaking, though, silica doesn't have, I mean, again, broadly speaking, doesn't have anything else in it, and it can most clearly fit into the glass former label.
Absolutely.
of the kind of three main ingredients that we're looking at.
Silica's our main glass former, the high majority of the time. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's almost in damn everything. So even if you want like a feldspar and you want that feldspar to supply you with like potassium or lithium, which are like fluxes, you're gonna get some silica in there.
Yes.
I think they're called free floating silica.
Okay.
Where you just have like extra silica and other minerals that are not really part of the recipe. But in the calculations, it's like, yeah, you have a little more silica than, especially the extended. It's like, you have a little more silica than, which is why I always take silica out of my recipes. Right.
Okay, so essentially, whether it's in a flux or whether it's in like a stabilizer or kind of, some combination of the two, like, because as we have said, some ingredients don't cleanly fit into each of those categories.
They almost never do.
They often have silica in them, and that silica that's in those other ingredients, not in the silica that's listed in the glaze recipe, that's the quote-unquote free floating silica that you could potentially take out of a recipe.
Yeah. And
without it, like, so since, for instance, with like G200, you can't take silica out of G200 because it's like, it's in the thing.
I don't know how to, at least.
Yeah. But conceivably, like, let's say you have, these wouldn't be real numbers, but like, let's say hypothetically your recipe calls for 100 grams of silica and 100 grams of G200.
It's a crazy amount of silica.
Right, I know. I'm just, this is just hypothetical. These are just numbers that are easy for my brain to understand.
Silica.
All silica, yeah. So you've got 100 grams of silica, 100 grams of G200. 50% of the G200 is silica, so you've got 50 grams of silica in the G200. Hypothetically, you could take 50 grams of silica from your main silica source so that the total is still 100 grams of silica, but it's just that 50 grams of that silica is coming from the G200.
I wouldn't put it in grams because we mainly deal in ratios, but I think you have the right idea.
Okay.
Like, I think a more apt thing would be like, if I have a glaze recipe and I only need 20%, I'm going to use percentages, of that recipe to be silica, and I've added 20 grams to a 100 gram batch, which is 20% of silica to the recipe already. And then I go, oh, maybe I need some feldspar. Whatever silica comes with that feldspar is technically is going to be added to the rest of that silica, right? So it's technically more silica than I now want in the recipe.
Right.
And that's my main issue. That's what I consider free-floating silica.
Okay.
Now, the issue with this mainly is that, and I'm going to use a direct comparison from the classes I took from the ceramics material workshop. The thing about this is that, like, if you make the glaze have unnecessary minerals or elements in it that it doesn't need to mature or melt at the certain temperature it's at, it becomes kind of like a truck, right? Like a gallon of gas in a hybrid goes way further than a gallon of gas in a truck. Right. And the truck is the proverbial, like, has too much silica in it. Versus me making the glaze more efficient and taking silica out and making it a bit lighter, making it what I like to call more efficient.
Right. Okay.
And that's how I get glazes like my Greymont glaze. My Greymont glaze was just a glaze that I liked a little bit, and then I was like, I wonder if I can make it more efficient. And then I took silica out, and then I was like, I wonder if I could take the lithium out and, and do a little bit. And then I added like this and this to it. And now it's like a great adventuring type glaze.
That's cool.
But that was like 3 or 4 shots of me doing just what I know how to do with glazes.
Okay. That makes sense.
Right. Now, the high majority of glazes you get in a bottle, at least, are just a base glaze with a colorant in it. Like, if you look at Amico's Sell It online, those are all the same base glaze. And the rest of it, after the silica, alumina, fluxes, floating in water, are probably the colorants.
Right.
And I don't know if they use metals or mason stains, but that's what it is. That's why those glazes work so well together, is because they're technically all the same damn glaze in a bottle, just with different colorants.
Right.
They're not all their own individual recipes, really.
Yeah. That makes sense.
I don't think that's the way it is with the Potter's Choice line. I think a lot of those are like their own recipes.
Okay.
But like the Sell It online is like the same glaze.
Yes, just with different colorants in it.
With what I suspect to just be different, like mason stains.
Okay.
So, because usually if you use metals versus mason stains for colorants, they move a little bit more.
Okay, like they run?
I wouldn't say run, but they usually give it a better variation of like texture color.
Oh, okay.
You're like Floating Blue has a lot of like different colors in it if you do it right.
Yeah. It has got like little tiny little swirlies and things.
Right. If I took the copper out and I took some of the rutile out and the red iron oxide out, if I took those metals out and whatnot, and I just replaced it with like blue mason stain because it's Floating Blue, it wouldn't do all that business.
Right.
That's
okay. That makes sense.
Wouldn't make that good.
Okay, so we've talked about G200, EPK, silica. Let's talk about lithium.
I don't want it.
Welcome to the floor, lithium.
Boom!
What?
Lithium! Get back in my cell phone and my car like you belong. Lithium ion batteries over glazes.
Oh, all right, tell me why you hate lithium. Okay, first of all, tell me what lithium is. What all is in lithium?
It's just lithium. It's just, we can look it up.
Is it 100% lithium like the silica is 100% silica? If I look this up,
and I'm going to look it up, but I'm so sure it's just lithium, which is why so many people like it. It's lazy chemistry. Like, people want a good flux melter in their glazes.
Come on. Just because it's like, quote unquote, simple doesn't mean it's lazy.
No, I want simple. Here's the thing. Hold on. No, there it is. Okay. Lithium carbonate, right?
All right, so
at least this is how it is on Digital Fire. It's not 100% lithium carbonate.
Tell the listeners.
Hold on, I have to look at this. It's I hate lithium carbonate so much. It's 40.74% lithium, and then it's 59.26% carbon dioxide.
Oh, okay.
Most, and this is just at least what I've been told. I haven't tested this myself. What usually happens is I take classes and then they say a very like base rule. They're like, this is what it is.
Yeah.
And then I go test it myself and I'm like, that's mostly true. There seems to be a difference in between the studio practice and like the scientific practice of glazes. And the scientific practice has very hard rules, right? It's like standard statements. But the studio practice is like, well,
sometimes things turn out differently than they're supposed to.
Yeah, sometimes like things, and I don't know if that's just because I don't know enough of the chemistry or the science behind it, but like, that's not what happened, and that's not what you said would happen. And I could definitely cheese a little bit.
Okay, so lithium is...
It's a really strong flux.
It's a flux.
The problem is it usually comes in carbonate form, and most carbonates, by my estimation, are water soluble, which means they move with the water instead of being suspended in the glaze, and that's not a good thing.
Right.
Which is why I actually, and this is just a pro tip, I'm sure I'm going to get flamed. I'm sure there's going to be some super heavy glaze, way more experienced than me, glaze nerd, who's going to show up in my DMs and be like, actually, but just try this for a second. If you have a glaze that has a good amount of lithium in it as one of its main fluxes, especially lithium carbonate, try dipping it taking out your pot and then dipping it again for 1 more second. Especially if you're a dipper, right? Or put 1 more layer of glaze on than normal. I'm so sure your glaze is going to come out better. I'm so sure. I do it with almost all my lithium glazes. I'll do a 1, 2, 3 dip. I'll let it dry. And then I'll do like a little bloop, little one. Comes out way better.
And the little bloop is basically so that instead of the lithium getting sucked directly into the cup, it's kind of more spreading out within that first layer of glaze that's already there. So less of the lithium gets sucked into the cup, and you're kind of replacing the lithium that on the first layer got sucked into the cup on that second set.
Hear me out.
Okay.
Hear me out.
Okay.
I'm 100% a man of logic.
Okay.
But
I disagree, but
okay. That's fair. Can I give it a less percentage to save myself? Can I take that back?
Yeah.
I'm 70% a man of logic, right? But the amount of things that I caveman brain and they work is insane, right? So the way I described it to you and the way you described it back to me is the way I usually describe it.
Okay.
I don't know if that's how it works.
Okay.
But it's been working.
Okay.
So
that's interesting. That's it. Yeah, because that's where my like.
I'm like, well, if it absorbs into the pot. Right? And there's a limit. When you, like, if you dunked your bisque in water and then you dunked it in glaze, technically, your bisque can only absorb a certain amount of water before it becomes, like, waterlogged.
Yeah.
Technically speaking, right? And that means any glaze you put on it afterwards isn't going to get absorbed because the water can't carry it onto it. Because the bisque isn't drinking it up. This is why I'm a big proponent of, like, stop washing your bisque off, soaking it in water before, because you're decreasing the amount of water it can absorb and the minerals that come along with it, really. Yeah. It's not that big of a deal. But every now and then I have students who like waterlog their stuff. Yeah. And they're like, this color didn't come out how it says in the bottle. And I'm like, well, it's not absorbing any minerals from the glaze. Yeah. Because all the absorption you took out of it by absorbing stuff. Anyway.
Yeah, no, I feel like if you're gonna wash your bisqueware off in water, you gotta let it then dry out. Like I get wanting
just for a bit.
Yeah, like I get wanting to remove the dust, because like sometimes depending on the amount of dust it can create glaze defects. Yeah, but if you're gonna do that, then I would recommend letting it dry for at least like 24 hours to get all, or at least however long it takes depending on the temperature, to get all of the water out. Because then if you're, like you're saying, if you have some amount of water in the cup itself, it's going to change how much glaze gets absorbed when you dip or brush your things on. And because there's so much variation in like how glazes turn out, glaze consistency. That's one variable that you want to avoid adding. Right. Is how much water is in my cup.
Yeah, I don't want another variable that might mess up my. Yeah, 100%. Because of that, I figured it works in the opposite way as well. We're like, well, if it's already absorbed as much as it can with glaze, if I dip it real quick, doesn't that mean like the lithium's going on top of the layer that I already put on there? And I don't know if that's true. I have no data to suggest that's true. That's actually what's going on. But I do know that it's been working for me. Yeah. And so I'm going to keep doing it.
Yeah. I wonder what would happen if you mixed up just water and lithium without all the other glaze components.
That's crazy.
And that made your second layer just lithium and water instead of all the other glaze chemicals.
Just pure flux.
Just pure lithium.
You're wild. I love that idea.
Just to see what would happen. I have no idea.
That's where it's born. Like I also have another, and this is copium. I'm gonna tell you this real quick. This is copium. I boil my water that I make glazes with. Okay. Almost all the water I use in my glazes, I boil it in a electronic kettle. And there's so much conversation around like using bottled water and distilled water.
Oh yeah, because
I have different water, and I have zinc in my water in my city. I'm like, I'm just gonna boil this.
Well, I mean, boiling it doesn't get those components out. Though.
I know, but like my caveman brain is like, yes, it does.
Oh,
so,
okay.
But I know logically, no, it doesn't.
Yeah, like it'll kill any organic material that managed to be in there, but it's not gonna get rid of the other.
Right, and so like,
at least I think, like, unless there's a component in there that would go up with the steam. But
you would
I don't
have
really
to
know
take
how
the
that
steam,
works.
which is the distilled,
and
then use that water, I guess.
Yeah,
like that. But like even I'm not doing that. So,
Yeah.
I'm not that much of an alchemist.
But but that definitely is a thing that I've heard people talk about, like depending on your local water supply, like if you have hard water versus soft water.
Yes.
You know, if you are a person who has researched like hair care, you probably know if your water is hard or soft, because that basically talks about like, all right, what minerals or what other things are actually in your water, because some people do talk about that affecting their glaze.
Yeah, for me it's really, it's easy to test, but it's also very city dependent. Like I live in Sacramento, so like I've never had that problem. We have pretty clean water here. But if you lived in like Flint, Michigan, we might have an issue.
Yeah. Or even honestly, like if you lived in LA, like, cause I mean, if you've gone to different
LA
cities,
water's different, yeah.
Yeah, like you know that there is a different flavor of water, you know, if you're drinking tap water, right?
You can taste it.
So yeah, so kind of, in my opinion, like if you're moving around a lot, I could see how it would be convenient to buy
bottled water.
Bottled water where
good
those
bottled water,
where
not
those
Arrowhead.
where those things have not been added, like distilled water, so there's nothing else in the water, right?
Right.
But you know, if you're not really moving around a bunch, then you don't really have that variability because you're always just using the same water.
Yeah.
So, but to me, it's kind of like one of those things, like the you know, like washing off your bisqueware before you dip it or add more glazes. It's like that's another variable. Conceivably, the water is another variable.
Technically, it could be.
Yeah, but if you're also not really moving around much, then that water amount isn't changing. So any changes that you might make in the glaze to compensate for that are going to be consistent because the water source is not changing.
Right, and it's also pretty easy to test because, like, if you just travel a little bit, you just make a glaze somewhere else.
And see what it does.
Or you can get some water imported from another city. Like, if you really wanted to test this, you could pick, like, 5 cities, get their tap water, and make the same exact glaze, the same exact way, on the same exact clay, and fire it in the same exact kiln around the same exact space, in the same atmosphere, to test to see if they're all different.
That would be fascinating.
It would be.
Could you imagine doing, like, a whole project of, like...
I'd be so mad if they all came out the same. I'd be like, I do this for.
Well, then, hey, that's more information. That's more information. It's science. It's science. Okay, so do you feel like we've kind of covered lithium for, like, introducing lithium, why you don't like it, what's in it?
Confused a lot of people already.
We've talked a lot. This is a lot of information. Hopefully the way that we are discussing it is comprehensible. But
I was gonna stop at like what a glaze was, because when I teach my classes at work, I'm usually like, this is what a glaze is.
Yeah. I mean, we kind of already talked about what a glaze is though in some of our other episodes. So, and I specifically wanted to get into like the actual ingredients.
Yeah, no, I agree. I just don't want to get to the like frying their brains point.
For sure. All right.
Sense.
Well, let's do just one more, and then we'll call it an episode.
Okay.
Let's do Rio or red iron oxide.
It's just a colorant. I'm not gonna
come down to the floor, Rio.
Hey. Oh, you guys are booing me? It's because I'm the only one with color on the cast. Yeah, that's right. I said it.
Oh my God.
You effing pure minerals think you're so high and mighty. I see you, EPK. Just because you're 10% doesn't mean you're better than me.
Oh my God. What is RIO or red iron oxide on digital fire? What all is in?
Just a colorant. But you want to see what's in it?
I want to know the percentages of the things because we've been doing that for the other ingredients, and consistency is key.
Okay, so it's 95% iron essentially. Yeah, and then it's like 5% H2O.
Oh, interesting.
I'll say right now I don't trust that.
Okay.
Different iron sources seem to work better than other iron sources. For some reason, yellow. And just to be clear, there's more than red iron oxide. There's black and yellow iron oxide, and those are the 3 most common types.
Okay.
Of iron.
Oh, you know, that's kind of cool too, because it's also saying like other words or other names, alternate names for iron oxide red. Yes. It's also called ferric oxide, red iron oxide, RIO, iron (3) oxide, Fe2O3, and hematite. That's interesting.
I didn't know hematite, actually.
I didn't know that either.
I've seen that before and been like, I don't need that. But now that I know, it's comparable.
Yeah, that's neat. That's neat.
And iron oxide, some people have told me it counts in as a flux. I've never experienced it being strong enough to count it in as a flux. I'm sure it counts in like the sneeze amount.
Oh, yeah. But the sneeze amount?
The amount that takes you to sneeze. But like, also, I personally don't count it in. There's people out there who make glaze recipes that are very, very, very exact. Like there's 47.23% of this. And if you look at my recipes, I'm like, it's 10% silica.
Yeah.
I don't need to be that exact. And when I do, it's because I like the glaze enough to be exact. But most of the time, I'm like, it makes red. It's fine.
Okay, all right. And kind of the nice thing about red iron oxide too is that not only does it go in glazes, but if you want to make a red iron oxide wash, you can do that with just red iron oxide and water, which is pretty cool.
And this might be a off point, but as a bigger discussion, we as potters share these minerals with the rest of the world, and we should be aware of that.
Yeah.
Right. Like lithium is in your cars, and well, if you have an EV car, but also in your batteries in your phones. Like we probably have lithium ion batteries, and some of these elements and minerals are the same minerals that we share. So whenever something happens in the economy with lithium going up, usually the price of lithium for our own glazes go up as well.
Yeah.
Right. So like if you have an electronic vehicle, you probably have a lithium ion battery somewhere in your car that charges it and runs off of. But like the price of lithium has gone up.
Yeah.
Cobalt as well.
Yeah. And that is like, I think one of these days we'll probably have a deeper discussion on this, but like the maybe or maybe not, but the
I shan't.
You shan't?
I shan't. I'll get angry.
Well, yeah, no, it is worth getting angry about because, yeah, I mean, I think we actually did talk about this on our episode about sustainability, but, like, one of the things that is tough about that is, like, a lot of these minerals are being acquired through, like, essentially slave labor and or really unfair, unhealthy, unsafe working conditions. So I feel like it's kind of, again, like, one of those things that, like, we can recognize. Okay, at least I'll say this is how I deal with it.
Yeah.
Like, I recognize that for the most part, I, as a single person, only have so much power to affect change in certain things. Like, I personally don't have the power to go over and be like, hey, you know, this company that's mining cobalt, you are going to provide all of your workers, you know, a safe environment. Yeah. Like, I personally don't have the power to do that, but I feel like it is at least still important to keep in mind that this is an aspect of ceramics. Yeah. And it's, you know, even though we want something different, obviously, like so it is. I think it's important to keep in mind, and I think it's important to have it on, if nothing else, the back burner, so that if there are opportunities, or it's like, I mean, shoot, even classic, like, you know, writing your congressperson, or when you think about voting, like, these are all things that even in little ways we can try and make our field more ethical when we can.
Yeah, I wouldn't even say, because this sounds surmount to a call to action, but I wouldn't even say that, like, I want you in the streets writing over this, but I firstly, if you're uncomfortable with the idea, want you to come to terms with the fact that a lot of the minerals that we use, not only for everyday use in our cell phones and cars and et cetera, but also in the ceramic art world, come off of the heels of acquiring them from what we would literally consider like child labor.
Yeah.
If I'm being real with you.
Yeah.
I think we all imagine, like, full-grown 35-year-old men with proper PPE equipment and hazmat suits on, digging minerals with machinery, and, like, that's not what's going on. Like, we're buying them on the low in some cases from other places, and then importing them over here or somewhere else to purify them and handle them and then make items out of them so we can put them together over here and then sell you an item at a premium price.
And by the way,
like, your iPhones are not, like, morally sustainably sourced.
Yeah. And if you do want some, like, you know, essentially, if you want the sauce on some of this information that we're talking about, the New York Times did a really good in-depth article talking about some of that. Yeah. And anyway, the sauce is out there. I won't put all of the information in the notes, but
it's pretty easy to find too.
Yeah.
Like, you can. Yeah. We'll try and bring it to you, but, like, you could just use Google for 2 seconds and it'll it'll bring it to you. You'll find it. But we're trying, you know, do our best not to spit nonsense here. So yeah, it feels bad because I'm very, like, this is what it is. But also I don't want people to feel bad for living their everyday lives. But at the same time, like we are born into and part of a system that is taking advantage of other systems.
Yeah.
And, like, you know what I mean? To put pretty colors on rocks. Like, and I want to be clear about that. So the first step, I think, is to have people realize that, like,
oh, this is where these things come from.
This is where these things come from. Yeah, and I think a further discussion of it is like, everyone is technically part of a system that is complacent, or not complacent, but compliant in, like, making these systems go further.
Complicit.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You're technically, like, by having a cell phone in your hand, you're technically complicit of lithium mining and all the negatives that come with it.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean you don't have, you know, the legitimacy to be able to say, like, yeah, this should be different. Like, you can engage in, or you can be what is it? I heard this quote that was like, you can critique capitalism while participating in capitalism.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't, I think, and this is a further conversation, but I think especially online, we take these little bits of people's lives. We find like a bone of the skeleton in someone's closet, and we make it into like a giant dinosaur-sized, museum-sized skeleton.
Yeah.
Right? Like, just because you have a cell phone doesn't mean I'm going to point at you and be like, you believe in child labor. Like, I'm not.
Yeah.
That's a stretch, has no context to it, right? So, but again, the first step is to realize that, like, this is where your minerals come from, kind of. You know?
Yeah.
Like, 100% of them are not morally sourced.
Yeah.
From the clothes you buy to the cell phone in your hand.
You know, maybe we should add that to our meet the ingredients list, is like where the
Oh, I've stopped buying cobalt altogether.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I just don't buy cobalt now. I use sawmills.
Yeah, but I think it would be actually cool to see or to look up like where the ingredients actually like come from and add that to our like meet the ingredients type of, you know, introduction, so we can say like, yeah, this is where, or, you know, I mean, because some of them come from like multiple places, right? But like for instance, like Kentucky ball clay actually comes from a mine in Kentucky,
right?
You know, so it's like it'd be cool to maybe add that. But yeah, honestly, listeners, let us know what you think about this episode. Hopefully, honestly, let us.
So sorry, the last part I just made you feel bad. My bad.
No, I mean, it's important. It's important. Don't apologize.
You learned a lot. And that was the price.
Yeah.
Your sadness feeds my knowledge.
Oh my god. But yeah, let us know what you thought of the episode. Let us know if you know, if it was kind of like, whoa guys, like y'all blew us out of the water with like too much information. It was too confusing. Let us know what you think, because again, we really appreciate your feedback for things like this. And so let us know what you think. Let us know what other ingredients you want us to cover. Because again, you know, glaze recipes are different all over the world and all over the country. So let us know what ingredients you would like to meet.
Oh, wait, going back to that 5 ingredients thing.
Oh, yeah?
Remember when I said when I'm in an argument, I say 5? There's always one nerd who's like, glazes are made out. If they're being smug about it, like, glazes are made out of 3 things. And then I get to put my glasses up like an anime character and go, technically it's 5.
What is the, okay, so the 3 is...
You know 4.
Wait, hold on, my brain. Yes, okay. Yeah, okay, so we know 4. Okay, so it's glass formers, stabilizers.
Which is usually alumina.
Right. And fluxes.
Okay.
And then...
fluxes are in 2 ingredients categories.
And you alkali earth, alkali metal.
Yes, and you need a good balance of those. You can't just dump metal, alkali metal into it and call it a day.
Yes. And then you have the colorants, so things like red iron. No, what's the 4th?
You can make a good
glaze.
Right,
the boron.
No.
What?
You can make a good glaze. You can make a fantastic glaze by having silica, the glass former. You can have the alumina, usually the stabilizer, the refractory, right? And the 2 fluxes, alkali earth and alkali metal. And without the colorant...
That's a glaze.
But you need one more thing to make it an actual glaze. A 5th, water.
Oh my god, right!
Water.
Oh
water
my
needs
god.
to be counted in as an ingredient.
Of course.
When you make a glaze, the amount of water that you put in the glaze matters.
Oh my god.
Because technically speaking, the more water you have, the less mineral you're getting per the amount that your pot soaks up. So the less water you have, the more mineral you're getting, right?
That's such a good point, bro.
The amount of people who like put too much water in their glaze and contact me like, my glaze isn't working. I'm like, how much water did you put in it? And then the next sentence, you count the amount of water? Yes! Damn it! Yes! If your glaze is being a little funky, not funky in like the pit way, but like...
If your glaze isn't turning out the way that you think it should.
Take out some damn water, man.
Yeah.
People just keep adding water too, like it's gonna fix it. It won't.
That's a real good point.
I'm just saying.
Wait, so what's the 5th ingredient?
Water.
No, what's the 4th ingredient then? Is that like the boron?
No, there's silica, the glass former.
Right.
There's alumina, which is the stabilizer or the refractory, right?
Yeah.
Alkali earth, alkali metal, water.
Oh, okay. You're counting the alkali earth, alkali metal
as 2 different ingredients, technically.
Yes, but I was putting those under the umbrella of a flux.
I don't, because I mean, yes, but like I don't, because the amount of people I tell that to, and they're like, well, I added enough flux, and I'm like, well, what kind of flux? Alkali metal. Okay, you need earth in there.
Oh, okay.
To like the ratio has to be okay for it to be like a good glaze.
Oh, okay, I got you.
The smell, that amount matters.
Okay.
Can't be dumping in bone ash and the stuff. Call it a day.
Yeah.
You know, silica, EPK, and bone ash. There you go.
Yeah.
That would suck.
Oh my god.
That would suck hard.
All right. Well, I guess. Okay, hold on. Let me do my NPR voice again.
That was a lot. I'm so sorry.
Well, Donte of Earth Nation Ceramics, thank you so much for joining us on the Mud Peddlers today. And dear listeners, thank you so much for listening. And you can let us know what you think about this episode and others.
I'm gonna be arrested right now.
Don't be
I feel like
arrested.
I'm gonna get sued for some reason.
You're not gonna get sued.
Okay.
I'm not gonna sue you.
Oh, good.
Don't sue us.
Okay.
I don't think you've got a reason to.
I feel like I'm going to express how I don't like a situation, and then you're gonna cry and make me feel bad for what you did to me.
Oh, like white tears?
Yeah.
And that's it for today. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of The Mud Peddlers. We would love to hear from you, so if you want to share your thoughts about the episodes or just see what Donte and I are working on in our studios, come say hi. You can find links to my social media at lindseymdillon.com. That's LINDSEY, M as in monster, DILLON.com.
And you can visit my pottery shop or see what I'm working on at earthnationceramics.com. And you can find me all over social media at Earth Nation Ceramics. It's spelled exactly how you think it's spelled.
And if you want to support the show, hear some bonus episodes, and see some behind the scenes of my work, you can support me and the show at patreon.com/Lindsey M Dillon. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next time.